Well, still at the UN, the 75th session of the General Assembly wrapped up yesterday. The annual general debate tackled issues such as the need for cooperation on COVID-19 vaccines, efforts to tackle climate action and to push to revive global multilateralism. The Assembly was, of course, held virtually and against the backdrop of the COVID-19 global pandemic. This comes at a time when many were even questioning the relevance of the United Nations. Well, joining us now via Zoom to reflect on some of the key deliberations of this year's UNGA is Foreign Policy Analyst at the Institute for Global Dialogue, Sanusha Naidu. Sanusha, thanks very much indeed for joining us. So, Volkan Bozkir, who's the chairperson of this year's UNGA, said that this meeting has been substantive and exceptional. Your thoughts?
Good evening, Peter. You seem to be a bit surprised by his comments, and I wonder why. I think the matter here is that the meeting started off very much at a point of intense rivalry, intense competition, and just a sense of not being able to understand where this UNGA is going in its 75th year of its existence. And I think the problem has been that when you listen to the speeches of the big heavy hitters at the reception, you had a sense that the whole question of the multilateral was in a state of powerlessness, that it was going nowhere. And even if it was going somewhere, it was nowhere slowly. And I think to my mind, when you listen to the speech of President Trump, Xi Jinping, the Indian president, you look at the speeches done by leaders from the EU, etc., it wasn't one that was inspiring to say that we're going to resurrect this institution, we're going to take it forward, we're going to find the pillars that are going to keep the multilateral agenda alive. What we did find was a lot of rivalry, power-based comments and speeches, accusations about geopolitical interests, and of course, other states accusing other states of Islamic phobia and all of that, walkouts and so forth. So I think this UN General Assembly started off as a very, very aggressive and in a very kind of uncomplimentary manner, where this kind of complementarity that's supposed to underpin this agency at the UN, which is quite a vibrant agency and holds key dynamics of power, didn't really start off from the blocks in that way. And the speeches all kind of intimated that. And then you listen to the closing of the UNGA yesterday by the president of the committee, and he talks about the fact that there's a resounding sense of strength. There's a commitment to multilateralism, that we're going to deal with for COVID-19 in 3 phases. We're going to get the track of Agenda 2030 back in its framework of achievability. And then at the end of the day, the question for me becomes is, I've heard this all before, and I'm wondering, when are you going to give us something that's not just rhetoric, but something that says it's a substantive output? For example, achieving Agenda 2030, where we're in now, the end of 2020, and we got 9 years to do that. Have you calculated the cost, the systemic risk, the systemic impact that COVID-19 has created in terms of whether or not it's achievable? And I have the sense that what I saw at the end of the closing of the UNGA meeting was more platitudes and rhetoric than real action of what's going to be done.
All right. I mean, they talk about the United Nations that we want, the United Nations that we need as the big theme for the 75th gathering. But I get a sense from what you're saying is that we haven't moved that much in 75 years, and that it's still an old boys club, and multilateralism works only on neutral issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think the COVID-19 is I would be basically not comfortable with saying that they only work on on soft issues, because I think the COVID-19 is not a soft issue. It has become the new gender conundrum for the world. It is basically its expansive and overarching impact that it has, not just on the health system, but on people's personal lives, professional lives, all kinds of it's a spiraling effect. I would say that that's not a soft issue. It has become a serious geostrategic issue, a developmental agenda issue, a question of economics, a question of political stability, geostrategic, political strategic, economic strategic, all of it crafted into one thing called COVID-19. And I think the question here is, how do you deal with it? Do you deal with it as a soft issue, that in a sense you want to deal with the vaccination, you want to make sure that you have early warning systems that don't prevent another COVID-19, and of course you are able to mitigate the risk through adaptive strategies. The problem with that is it all requires resources, and those resources have to come from somewhere. So if we have the big players, the bullies in the room, who are saying to you, well, I don't really like where this is going, and I don't want to give you my money to do that. I prefer to take my money and do this. Then we're going to end up in a situation where the kind of cohesiveness that we need to deal with the COVID-19, to make sure that Agenda 2030 rolls out in time, is going to become a mammoth task for the implementers and the bureaucracy of the UN. I think the problem here, Peter, is not so much about what needs to be done. I think we know what needs to be done. The problem here is there the political will for wanting to do it? And secondly, what are the power rivalries that are taking place? And of course, the world in 1945, when UNGA, or when the UN was formed, has fundamentally shifted in 2020, where UNGA now has to deal with these competing power balances and competing rivalries between the bigger players who use the UN to flex their muscle.
All right. And then, yeah, the reform of the UN Security Council, Africa crying for reform and proper representation. President Ramaphosa wearing his hat as AU chair, talking about debt issues and forgiving of interest. Did we get anything as a continent out of UNGA 75?
Maybe we did. Maybe President Ramaphosa's COVID-centric approach as chairperson of the AU is something that I think we can't ignore. It's something that they presented there around how to actually capacitate Africa in the context of early warning systems, dealing with mitigating the risks and the onset of potential risks and so forth, and that's there. But I do think that one of the key things, and it was released 2 days ago, is the UN report on the illicit financial flows that leave Africa every year, and how much of that money can actually be used to finance the Africa's Sustainable Development Goals framework, around about 200 million. And I think that should have been a key debate for Africa, led by South Africa at the AU, at UNGA, to say we're no longer going to be accepting these frivolous loans that tie us into structural adjustment. We want to be able to say that we as Africa are actually net creditors to the world, because about $86 billion leave this continent through illicit transaction flows. It's even more than what we get in Africa from ODA and FDI.
Right.
And I think that should have been a key driver in saying to the world where you take Africa's money, how you manipulate it, and how you use it to basically cover it up with mispricing and in tax havens. We want that money back, because we are going to capacitate our people from human resource development, education, literacy, and our institutions around employment structures, and deal with our healthcare system.
All right, Sanusha Naidu, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and sharing your thoughts and insights on UNGA 75 with us this evening. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
All right, that was Sanusha Naidu, who's a Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for Global Dialogue, unpacking the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly, which has just concluded.